Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to talk with Efrat LaMandre. She has dedicated her entire career to understanding how to help patients really optimize and know what they need to say, but also how do you advocate for yourself when you're doing everything right. And we've all been there, especially as women. I know I have been, where you're doing all the things, and yet science is telling you that you're completely fine.
Mhm.
And what I appreciate about the way that you approach this, Dr. E, is that you aren't trying to tear down the medical part of the whole equation. You're really just trying to shine light on the advocacy part. So, how do you empower others to really speak their truth in a way that's not demeaning other providers or practitioners? And I think that that's one of the biggest values that you bring in all of the work that I've noticed that you put into the world.
Thank
Um,
you. That's
so,
so kind.
yeah. So, how about you just start by telling us a little bit about your background and what really got you focused on gaslighting in specific and how it's often misunderstood?
I appreciate that, and I think it's important. The story of how I got here is important because it will
Mhm.
help people determine kind of who they should take advice from, in my opinion. So first of all, I started in a medical practice. I own one of the largest NP-owned practices in the country. So typical primary care, exactly what you get from your PCP, and I was doing everything by the protocol, by the book, as I was taught in school, and it was fine. And it was fine. And I thought I was doing everything wonderfully until my wife got sick.
Mhm.
And then when she got sick, I'm in medicine, she's in medicine, our friends are in medicine, so access is not an issue. Knowledge, as far as we knew, was not an issue, and yet we couldn't get answers. And
Mm.
that forced me to start looking in places that I thought were forbidden.
Okay.
Because in the medical curriculum, which we'll get to, we don't really talk about things outside of what's been vetted by the protocol. And she's cured. She's 100% better. And I can go into the details of that story later on. But the
Yeah.
point is, at that moment, I realized that while everything I've learned was certainly valuable, I discovered that it is not everything.
Mm.
So I call myself a recovering medical gaslighter because I really thought I was doing the right thing until I realized that the tools were limited. But often that is the case. Unless somebody experiences that, they don't know that there is more to look for. And I bring this back to our audience real quick, is that when you are getting health advice from someone, I recommend that that person should also be somewhat clinically trained first. All right. So it doesn't have to be an MD. I'm not an MD. It's MD, PA, NP, DO, someone who clinically trained first, who's well versed in the medical curriculum, but then decides to shift and go back to school. It's very different than someone who is a health influencer, no disrespect. It's a different mindset. It's also a different, they have more skin in the game because to take everything you've learned, years, your reputation, your knowledge, and some of my guests on my show are like heads of departments in like nationally renowned hospitals, and then to decide to risk all that, your reputation, among your peers, and to kind of start over. No one's paying for that school, and you don't get school loans to go back to the school, and to reinvent yourself and come back, double down. There is something about that space which they speak from that is very different than the person who is just perhaps there to sell a supplement.
Yeah, I agree. I think that so a little bit about my background is that I've been in the health and fitness industry for a good portion of my career. So I have seen so many supplements come and go in my lifetime. And I'm
Right.
going to tell you they come in cycles. There's different diet fads. Like I've seen it all.
Yes,
And it's like
100.
you can't sell me on anything because I've like seen it all before.
Yes.
And they just repackage it differently with different colors. And so I love that you bring that forward. And it is not it's not to, discredit the good work that's being done in the supplement field or even in the
Yes.
influencer field, all of that. But when it comes to our health and like taking care and taking that step forward in our health, I think it's really important to have a medical provider like you were describing. And I think I want to really double down on the fact that you're like, hey, we could be giving up our entire career here to go down this path, but we feel called to do it differently. We
Yeah.
feel that nudge. And is it mainly because of your wife's, like, success that made you risk it all? Like, what made you risk it all?
Absolutely. So when you get certified, most of us get certified by Institute of Functional Medicine.
Mhm.
And to get certified, you have to first be um, a clinical provider of some sort. And without question, everyone who gets there, after all the years of schooling that you've already done, anyone who gets there has either they themselves gotten sick or someone that they love has gotten sick. There is something where you're just desperate enough to question everything you've been taught. It doesn't happen elsewhere. And so for my, colleagues who have still kind of remained steadfast in the protocol, they're lucky. They're lucky that they've never needed more.
Mm.
I wish we can, and we could talk about gaslighting in a moment. I wish we can remove some of that resistance to allowing for other tools in, because they don't recognize how lucky they are that they've never needed more than what is available in the 15-minute visit. You know,
Right. Right. Well, and even, like, when you're talking about, medical gaslighting, what does that actually look like? What is misunderstood or dismissed, and how do you define it based on your clinical research and even experience?
That's a great question to first define things, because people kind of sort of know what it means, and maybe it's the first time
Mhm.
they heard of it, or maybe they're putting the word medical and gaslighting together. So first, let's just talk about what gaslighting is, because it is a little different. Gaslighting, by like staunch definition, is very much malicious. It's very
Mhm.
much when somebody tries to reinvent your reality so that you question yourself, question your own reality. So that's true gaslighting. Medical gaslighting is not quite like that. Medical gaslighting, it feels like a dismissal, but it is I propose that it is not malicious. So let's just remove the 5% of people who are just not nice. Let's remove them from the equation. They're not nice no matter what. They're dismissing everyone in their life, right? Not just their patients. So let's just remove the not nice people from here. Generally speaking, these providers have gone to school for a really long time. No one went to school to just finally be able to work, to just look their patient in the eye and just say, get the heck out of here. So no one's doing it maliciously. So I think medical gaslighting is different than gaslighting for the malice piece, but it's really a blind spot in the system that forces an over reliance on the protocol or the labs or the image,
Mm.
so that the clinician is then going to look you in the eye and say, there's nothing wrong with you. And that feels like gaslighting and it feels dismissive, but it's really a result of a flawed system.
Mm.
Uh, does that help? As a
No, I love that, and I feel like what you're doing is you're actually helping even patients not maybe use even the word gaslighting, like, even because it can feel so intentional and like it's something against you, and while what I'm hearing you say is that it's the system that's in place that's really causing this inability to find different resources. Is
Yeah,
that
and
fair to say?
we could keep the term medical gaslighting because I think that feeling is real, but if we can flip
Mhm.
it on its head, because in any relationship, it takes two to gaslight, right? It takes two, but I
Mm.
hand up three fingers. It takes two. It takes two to gaslight, because someone has to do the dismissing, the gaslighting, and then someone has to accept it, right? Because you could just walk out or just be like, yeah, I don't think so. So
Right.
we can't change the part where someone's going to gaslight, whether it's malicious or not, but we can change how we're going to receive it, to your point,
Mhm.
and what we can do about it. And that is what we're going to talk about. But I think first, I would love to explain what I mean by this blind spot, if that's okay.
Absolutely. No, floor is yours.
Okay. So this is blind side. We go to school, and in school we are taught, a patient comes in, we're going to listen to your symptoms, we're going to run some labs, do some imaging, and then our mission is to find the disease. That is the whole mission. Find the diagnosis. Do you have something as simple? Do you have a flu? Do you have a cold? Do you have cancer? Do you have a broken bone? Do you have anemia? Like, that is the goal. So we listen for the clues. We actually, I shouldn't say we. Clinicians actually don't care about the whole story. They don't care that it happened on Tuesday. They don't care that it interrupted your picnic or your child's birthday. None of that is relevant to the listening. The listening is, what are the clues that I need to listen to get to the diagnosis? then you align it with your labs or your images, and then you are a great clinician when you discover the diagnosis. Because once I discover the diagnosis, we can then go on and figure out the plan, the medication, the treatment, the surgery. So if I listen to your story and then we run all the labs and all the images and no disease is detected, then by default of the system, we have to say, you are fine. So in essence, the system is designed to completely dismiss your lived experience, because you're like, what do you mean I'm fine? I don't feel fine. I'm exhausted. I have no energy. I'm not the same as I used to be. Well, that's all well and true, Mrs. Smith, but you are fine. And so this disconnect between what's happening in the labs and what's happening in the patient's body is the area that feels like gaslighting. And it's just embedded in there. And part of that is because the system is meant to find disease. And for most of us who are feeling unwell, we are either in a state of pre-disease, the time before it's diagnosed, right? You don't get diabetes overnight. You get pre-diabetes first. You don't get Alzheimer's overnight. You have some cognitive issues first, but it's not detectable yet. So you're either living in a pre-disease or you're dealing with something that conventional medicine does not recognize, like mold, chronic Lyme. And so you keep going back to the office, either in a state of pre-disease, can't detect it, or dealing with something that the system doesn't recognize. And so you are going to be stuck in this loop forever of feeling dismissed.
Yeah. Now, how do you begin as a provider to really shift that and look deeper? I know this wasn't on the question.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Because that's a big thing. If you're, constantly, it's real easy to kind of negate things if you're just constantly seeing it over and over. But how do we start to shift that?
So I think if any clinician is listening to these type of podcasts, mine, yours, others, they're already a little bit shifted. For those who think that these type of conversation are meaningless, there really is no hope for them in this space. And that's so I'll talk about them for a minute, and then I'll come back to those who are kind of not sure what to do. So as a patient, if your provider is 100% just not into it, does not want to hear about your ashwagandha, it's okay. Don't get mad. You can't ask people to change. You can't ask people to change their religion. You can't ask people to change their sexuality. You can't ask people to change. So if this doctor is great at doing your annual, giving you your screenings, willing to do the blood work for you, amazing. Just use him or her for that tool. Like, you don't need one guide. You need several guides, right? Like, even the rest of our life, you might have a priest for one thing, and you might have a coach for the gym, and you might have a life coach, or you might have a big sister that you talk to. There's not usually one person that's your everything. Even in a super loving marriage, you still have your best friend that you talk to some stuff about that you don't talk to your spouse about. So it's okay to also treat your medical guides that way. So maybe that conventional doctor will be in charge of the conventional stuff and the mammograms and the colon screenings and all these things. And don't worry about it if they don't change. Like, don't try to change them. Don't be like, well, how could you? And here's the study that I saw, and I looked on chat. Just leave them be. Now, for those clinicians who are like, I'm not sure what to do. I hear it because I've tried it. I went gluten-free and my stomach feels better. I wonder if that could help my patients. But maybe they don't want to do the deep dive the way I did and some of my colleagues did. It's just not in the real house and not interested. So to them, I would say, you don't have to go all in and get the certification, get the PhD in integrative medicine and change your practice. But what you can do is simply add 2 sentences to when you practice. When the patient comes in, you do everything, you find nothing. You first say, I found nothing, but I believe you. Right? That is very different than telling somebody you're fine. I'm not fine. I believe you. I don't have the answer, but here's a list of providers that I've gotten to know over the years in the local area that I can refer you to. And I could be of support. I can run the test for you. Or if there's some things that need to be ordered that I'm in line with, I'll order that for you. Like, let me be adjunctive to your journey. And just doing that will... First, your patients will love you. They will trust you. They will feel truly that we're making shared decisions. You're not making them choose. It's either my way or someone else's way. And it's just that moment is therapeutic as well for your patient.
Yeah, and what it does is it carries the conversation, the energy differently. It
Right.
allows them to then feel more empowered to make a different choice or, and I'm sure there are different opportunities for collaborative efforts where, you might not practice this one way, but you might have a colleague that does, and that's where those
Exactly.
referrals come into place.
Exactly.
When you're thinking about all of this, what are those downstream consequences? Like whether it's psychologically, economically, when people are dismissed, what does that look like in their life?
Yeah. So first, if we're dismissing people clinically, we run the risk of not catching the issue on time.
Mm,
We run the risk of not catching something that's reversible. So if you're telling me that you can't find your keys and you can't find your phone and mom has dementia and you're really nervous about dementia, but you pass the silly tests that we have to determine if someone has dementia. And so then you're like, yeah, you're fine because you passed this ridiculous test. But what would it look like if I say, look, it doesn't, you haven't failed the test. I don't think you're in the land of dementia yet, but I really believe your experience. And what if we could do some interventions? Because we know insulin resistance affects it, and we know alcohol and lifestyle affects it. So if we actually, instead of dismissing and waiting for that inevitable shoe to drop, actually intervened, then we can reverse disease. We can prevent disease. So first,
mhm,
clinically, it's such a missed opportunity. And if anyone doesn't really know what I mean, just think about diabetes. We're all kind of aware of this pre-diabetic state.
mhm.
And in pre-diabetes, it's the land where if I make lifestyle changes, I can reverse and never get diabetes. That is true of every chronic disease.
I agree.
Right? So if we can get to you in that pre-disease state, we're golden. So that's the first part. The second, it has a psychological and a trust impact. First, trust of the patient clinician. I mean, we've never been in an era of such distrust of doctors. And there are many reasons to that. But one of the reasons is this insistence for many of my colleagues who are like, it's my way or the highway. I'm not going to answer your questions. I don't want to talk about vaccines. I don't want to talk about your, cortisol levels. That's all nonsense. And so then the patient's still going to go home and experiment. And the patient's going to be like, I feel so much better. I did this thing that my doctor said won't work, and I feel so much better. And so now I don't trust that doctor anymore, right? So now the next time he tells me to do something, am I going to trust it? So there's a trust issue that's happening. In general, you don't want to be prescriptive, like you do this because I told you. That we don't parent that way. We don't, right?
No.
So at the very least, have a conversation. There are times when I do think my patients are doing something that's dangerous to not take a medication. So I will tell them, I'll say, listen, I really think it's dangerous. Here are the reasons why. But of course, it's your journey. It's your body. I'm just going to be here to stand by. It's very different than say, you have to take this or I'll discharge you from my practice. Right?
Right.
It's very different. And I could document, I could keep myself safe. I could say I discussed this with a patient. They don't want to, but I can't force it down their throat. So there's a distrust there. But worse is those patients who then the doctor said, I'm fine. I don't feel fine. Maybe I am fine. Maybe I'm dramatic.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm anxious. Maybe I just need to push through it. So
Right.
then you start distrusting yourself as a patient, as a human. And that is damaging because now you're losing your connection to your inner voice.
Mhm.
And that's huge. So we have this clinical part, we have this trust part. And then if we pan out, we have the whole system suffers because if I can't get up to get my day and I'm calling out sick or I can't take care of my child, it has a systemic burden. When we have sick people, there's a systemic economic burden when we don't intervene. So every single person in society, not just the interaction between you and your clinician, is suffering as a result of dismissal.
Yeah, well, and you hit one of the questions I even had was, how do you see this relate with patients that are starting to distrust their own bodies and their symptoms, and they start dismissing themselves when they really need that, again, preventative health care versus the after effects.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that, like you were saying, it's unfortunate that there is such a high distrust in the medical field in this day and age. And how can I ask how much that has shifted in even in your own career of what you've seen?
Sure. I've been practicing now for 12 years, and there was definitely a time where the clinician's word was just trusted, which in retrospect is not good for anyone. Because clinicians are just human. They're not God. They're just humans. And protocol is still also made by humans. And there are so many humans are so varied, to the point where sometimes we're like, well, I took this Tylenol and it gave me a headache. I'm just making something up.
Right.
Well, I never heard of that side effect. But clearly that happened to you because you went and you did the test. You tried it 3 times, and every time I give you a headache. So like there's so much variability in human reactions also. So and then in these 12 years, obviously the internet has become a bigger feature and very democratizing. Like I love that my patients can get access to things. It used to be like this, the doctor or the clinician knew everything and you kind of didn't have access unless you really just wanted to nerd out and figure out
Right.
research. Now it's at your fingertips, which many clinicians don't like. They don't want to be questioned. They're like, oh, great, you looked that up on chat. And I'm like, no, bring it on. Bring it on. Because first of all, I mean, I don't know everything. What if you come up with something that I never heard of or something that we should explore? Let's leave no stone unturned. That's number one. That's always a possibility. And number two is if you've already Googled it or ChatGPT'd it, and now you're anxious about it, now it's my responsibility to help you prove or disprove it so that you're not anxious about it. To just tell you that's crazy. And then you're going to go home at night and think you still have a brain tumor, right? Because that's what you read on ChatGPT.
Right.
My
Right.
responsibility to walk you through that. So I think there's been a shift from being like, this is what I said and this is what goes. And I don't think all my colleagues are on the same page, but those that are thriving are the ones who are like, let's do this together, share decision making, bring me what you got, let's do the labs, let's talk it out. And I think that just in general is a better way to live life.
Yeah. Well, and do you feel like some of the times, and this is just something that came to mind, is that for a clinician that it can feel disheartening when you can't find the symptom or the disease. Does that happen in your experience?
Happens all the time, especially in primary care, right? Primary care is like you first go to primary, and in primary
Right.
care, it could be cardiac, it could be neuro, it could be skin, it could be musculoskeletal, it could be GI. Like it is like a fire hose. The patients are coming through the day with every body part in question. Primary care is honestly, if you like your PCP, go give them a hug because think about like when you have a specialty, you spend your entire career just looking at skin if you're a dermatologist, right?
Mhm.
Primary care has to know everything about everything. It's a
Right.
it's a lot. It's a lot. Like my day,
Mhm.
by the end of the day, I've literally had to complain about every body part from like the top of the ear to your anus to your knee, like everything in between
Wow.
to this vague symptom in your right shoulder, the vague symptom in your belly, and you have to figure it out. And you 100% want to do this. You want a solution. You want it for so many reasons. You want it because you went to school for it. You want it because you're curious. You want it because you want to give your patient relief. As I said earlier, no one goes into this. No med school interview student says, I want to do this just to be an asshole, right? They say, I want to do this because I want to help patients. Like
Yeah.
literally the answer that everyone has. So sorry for cursing on live.
No, it's all good. We're
Okay,
good.
so you want to do it, and a lot of times people leave practice and you're not really sure. You've set them on the path, like go get this CAT scan, go to the specialist. So a lot of times you send them on to the path of what to do. So it is very normal not to know what's happening with your patient and to send them on to tests. I think what we're talking about is the patients who've already been to all the tests. They've already done all the specialties.
Mhm.
They already have a folder and they're coming back to you. How do you respond to that? Like, do you immediately, and I'm telling you, patients out there, if you're coming with your folder, your PCP already internally is rolling their eyes in the back of their head. They don't want to see your folder. They don't have the bandwidth for it. They don't have the capacity for it. I know you want to bring it to them. Wrong audience. You bring that to your functional medicine provider.
Right.
Little pearls of wisdom there. But the reaction to that is really critical. The reaction of like, I don't know where to send you anymore. That is where the clinician has to be like, okay, I don't know where to send you anymore in this conventional medicine box. You've seen neurology, you've seen everyone. But I really think and believe, first of all, I believe your experience, and I think you need to go explore outside of this box. And that's the part we clinicians have to get more comfortable with.
Yeah. And do you feel there's anything that even patients can understand about the constraints that clinicians are working under and vice versa?
Yeah. So this goes back to the fact that we are not going to change our clinicians, right? So we're going to build a team of various clinicians, just like you have your GYN and you have your PCP. You're going to need your functional medicine person and maybe a therapist. So you're going to build your team and you're going to understand what they can and can't do. Like your functional medicine person might be someone who can't prescribe anything for you, right? Depending on their background. Some functional medicine people are like chiropractors. They can't prescribe medication. So you're not going to get mad at them. You're going to recognize the limitations. So recognize the limitations of your doctors, your clinicians. They're stuck in, no one likes this wheelhouse of 15-minute visits. There's no clinicians like, great, this is what I signed up to do. I want the most complex patients to figure it out in 15 minutes. Like they are not happy with this either.
Right.
So come prepared, come organized with your communication. Come prepared doesn't mean bring a file. Come prepared means come with exact language, right? Don't say, I've had this all the time. I've had this all my life. It always hurts. Like the hyperbole, the patients tend to do that in order to kind of show the clinician like this is really serious, but it actually makes it sound less serious. It actually makes them, when someone says always all my life, the very first thought as a clinician is like, okay, so why'd you come today? It's always all your life. Like it's actually not
Right.
impressive. It
Yeah.
sounds like not a big deal, right? But if you say, I'm always fine, and since last Tuesday at 2:00 after I ate a taco, my right knee hurts, like really specific. Here's the thing. And since then, the pain isn't like this. It gets worse when I walk up the stairs. It gets better when I go to the bathroom. Like whatever it is, the more specific and precise you are more likely to get a pathway. Yeah. So hyperbole it's not a good place. It's not a good thing to bring into the exam room, the 15-minute exam room. So yes, understanding how they're listening, understanding that they're not going to give you an hour of the time because they physically cannot. Like they will get fired.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not going to give you an hour of your time. They're going to do things that are part of the protocol. They're going to do things that insurance has already approved. You will not change that.
Right.
You have to kind of live in that system, use it to its fullest. Get every MRI that you can, get every ultrasound you can, get the labs that you can. And then when you hit a wall, you have to go elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really important to kind of just note, and especially to help the physicians out there that are like, yeah, I mean, I hear everything that you're saying because it is insanity to try to figure out everything in such a short period of time, and until there's a different way, there's just not. And the other thing is that they're, like you said, having the team there in place to help you navigate different areas of that care, because again we have this beautiful way of connecting several different practitioners
Mhm.
in a way that is supportive of our overall health, and it would be a lot to ask one provider to have the answers for everything.
Right.
And I loved earlier how you kind of like put it into perspective to say, like, even when you're married, you have your best friend that you still talk to,
Yeah.
because we just need these different people in our lives. So shifting into like what you're doing to advocate for this. I know that you're a public speaker and all of the things. So can you tell us how people can bring you in to do a talk or anything like that?
Yes. I love speaking on stages. It's my favorite thing to do. I have never met a crowd that does not need some like rah-rah empowerment. You have this, here's what you're going to do next in the exam room. So I think it's great. I speak to all different professions. Like recently, I just went to the the police department women's conference. Like
Mhm.
every single person needs a direction on how to manage this crazy maze. And also to not feel so disempowered in the system. So I love speaking. I also have a podcast, Medical Disruptor, that you can find anywhere. And then if you go on my website, which is also medicaldisruptor.com, then there's access to the podcast. I created a newsletter also called The Medical Middle Ground to try to help people navigate. So I give the conventional, I'll take a topic, let's say
Mhm.
cholesterol. I'll give the conventional approach, I'll give the influencer approach, and then I give you like the in-between approach. So right now it's just about speaking and coming to the podcast. And I'm working on book number 2, which is about medical gaslighting, but we have time for that one to come out.
Yay, I'm excited to read it. And what was your first book? I didn't
First
realize.
book, yeah, it's
Yeah.
called the first book was called It's Not in Your Head. That one was self-published, so it was not, it was an Amazon bestseller, but it was not as a big deal as this next one's coming up. And that one is a great kind of guide of in this world of like, should I do mold testing? Should I do Lyme testing? Like, what should I do first? It's kind of like, do this first and then do this second. And then if you don't feel well, then here are the tests you should consider, but kind of gives you an order of how to do things
Okay.
because it's just so much out there.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure we've seen so many multiples of everything. And especially in your practice, it's like, okay, because it is so overwhelming. Like you have a little bit of heavy rain and then you start freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, what if my roof or my whole house is going to
Yes.
have mold? So, and not that that doesn't happen because it does. And then how do you pay attention to all of those things? So it's great that you have like a step by step process for people to even understand why this test over this one in this order,
Yes.
because it just helps you kind of navigate those nuances. Well, I have enjoyed hearing your perspective, and you can tell that you're really passionate about holistic care in that you see the potential in everybody having a body that feels good, right? I think that navigating disease for anybody is challenging. And if we can get into the preventative side, so many shifts are possible. And if anybody's interested to speak with you, work with you, bring you into their team, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Sure. So medicaldisruptor.com is the website. I don't take on patients one-on-one in the functional space. I
Mhm.
have my primary care practice, but speaking or that's kind of like the way we'd interact.
Amazing. And I
Yeah.
ask this of every single guest. What's one key takeaway that if you could leave with anybody that you hope they carry forward, what would that be from today?
Mm, one key takeaway. I would say I'm gonna say two things.
Sure. Everybody usually says two
The
things. I
two.
should probably just say
Yeah.
two.
One is really believe yourself. Really believe that inner voice. That inner voice is never wrong. And two, if there was one thing that you could do for your health every single day is just practice gratitude.
Mm.
It just changes your central nervous system. It changes your heart rate variability. It changes your perspective on health. It changes you biochemically. So before you even get to the gluten-free, dairy-free stuff and the supplements, just practice gratitude throughout the day for the most basic things that you have: running water and a shower and a home or a couch to sleep on. Whatever it is, it will change your health.
Wow. Okay, so should have asked that question in the beginning because now I'm wanting to ask you everything about that. I'd love to be round two. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for everyone that has tuned in for today.